Welcome, everyone, to the Anthony and Todd Show, a weekly podcast that critiques and memes music. I'm your host, Vincent, aka Code Orange is my favorite flavor of Mountain Dew.
I hate you so much. Because there is an orange Mountain Dew. It's called, is that one Livewire?
I think their cherry flavor is called, Code Red.
Yeah, there is a Code Red. And they have an orange, Mountain Dew as well. I think its flavor is called, Livewire or some shit like that.
LimeWire? Ooh, you can illegally download music.
No, Livewire.
And I'm joined by my ever-attentive co-host, my best friend, my pal, my amigo, my droog, Jonathan.
A.K.A. Brian Eno Education.
I think I've used that one before, but I don't care. I really enjoy that one. This is episode 138 of the Anthony and Todd Show, an episode we would like to call Racists Hate This New Brian Eno and Roger Eno album, because it mixes colors.
Too topical.
Too topical? It's always been too topical.
Yeah.
Today we're going to go over some recent releases, and we're going to be reviewing them for you all like we normally do with this new Code Orange album underneath this Brian Eno and Roger Eno album, Mixing Colors, this Districts album, You Know I'm Not Going Anywhere, and finally,
they definitely
Watsky's
aren't going anywhere
placement.
new.
They aren't. Same thing for Watsky. Without any further, or no, wait, before we start, if you want to follow the Anthony and Todd Show on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you can find us at Anthony and Todd. You can find us youtube.com/the Anthony and Todd Show. And if you want to listen to this audio form, you can find us Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, and Spotify by searching the Anthony and Todd Show in your favorite podcast browser. Now, are you ready to taste the experience of Code Orange, my favorite Mountain Dew flavor?
I stopped drinking Mountain Dew a couple of years ago.
Were you too edgy for it? Did you outgrow it?
No, it's because Mountain Dew is ungodly unhealthy, and for some reason, every time I drank it, my acne would get really bad.
Oh, now you should drink a ton of it.
No.
Code Orange is a Pittsburgh metalcore band / I think at one point they were a hardcore punk band, but mostly now they're known for their metalcore.
They're industrial metalcore.
Industrial?
There's industrial elements in there.
Yeah. Probably my favorite elements are probably the industrial elements. Yeah. Thinking about it now, I wouldn't classify as an industrial metalcore though. I guess I wouldn't classify a lot of stuff as metalcore because I really am unfamiliar with the genre.
I am more familiar with the genre. I would say this is metalcore, sometimes industrial metalcore, but mostly just metalcore.
The band consists of Eric Shade Balderose on guitar and vocals, Reba Myers on vocals and guitar. Reba McEntire's on this.
Oh, wow. She's really branching out from her country roots.
And her TV show.
Yeah.
Jamie Morgan's on vocals and drums. Joe Goldman is on bass. And Dominic Landolina, I don't know how to pronounce things. I don't know why I do the show to begin with, on guitars. They put out an album that was critically acclaimed back in 2017 called Forever, which I haven't listened to, but I wanted to see where the hype of this band would lead. And also, it's time to make a very stupid wrestling reference because all roads lead to wrestling. They have performed at a couple NXT takeovers. And also they have done the theme music for The Fiend, Bray Wyatt. So that's important to some of you out there. Also, I think they're one of two bands on Triple H's speed dial, I think, along with Poppy, which is weird.
Vincent, I need you to go at least one fucking episode without somehow relating something to wrestling.
It's important to the culture.
It's really not.
This new album's 14 songs, 47 minutes, and it has some ambitious scope with some of the production, some of this hectic and intense, manic production with glitchy cutouts and synthetic shrieks, some overpowering, menacing drums, and some very surprising elements at times, like all of a sudden it will get into this mass wall of distortion, or you'll get a glass shattering sample, or all of a sudden static will come out of nowhere. A bunch of surprising elements that create some twists and turns on here, which is nice. But I like the effort put into this project, but it leads to the album getting kind of lame halfway through.
Yeah, this album starts off insanely good with Deeper Than Before and Swallowing the Rabbit Hole. and it's just really unique. It's a blend of, especially with like Deeper Than Before, like horror inspired like industrial soundscapes. There's some things on there that sounded like it came out of like a Silent Hill game, and then mixing that with like metalcore, and it was really interesting. And metalcore is a genre that, like, for the most part, I just don't listen to anymore because it's kind of getting extremely stale and repetitive and lame. And so when this album opened, I thought this is going to be like the first metalcore album in a while to like really have an impact and fucking mean something. And then Sulfur Surrounding happens, and that all just kind of goes away.
Yeah, like halfway through the album, it's the performances on this are production wise very amazing, but they kind of run out of ideas halfway through, to where the point where there's ambition behind the project, there's passion to what they're doing, but they aren't really necessarily creating anything new that you haven't already heard in the album at that point. The vocals, and
not even just for that album, there are, like, I made it as a joke before, but if you're familiar with Bullet for My Valentine's, like earlier material, there's a lot of stuff on here that just sound kind of like that. Like, it's nowhere near as fucking cringe-inducing or inducing as Bullet for My Valentine could get, but it's still very reminiscent of just that era of metalcore.
Yeah. But I think one of the biggest things that I have is that I find a hard sense to get a personality out of the vocal performances and the lyrics being presented. There's no lyricism besides on Who I Am, which was just referencing a story I actually never heard of. It's a stalker called Ricardo Lopez who was stalking Bjork and like sent her an acid bomb, or attempted to send her an acid bomb.
You never heard
and
that
committed
before?
Suicide. I've never heard that story before.
Oh, I had.
I don't know why I haven't, but you think there would be at least 500 podcasts about it today, because how heavy true crime is being consumed nowadays.
But it's like also Bjork, so you think like it'd be everywhere because it's Bjork.
I guess I don't know why I haven't heard that. Maybe I did, and maybe I just didn't think it was that interesting. I don't know. But I think the vocals and the lyrics just don't bring a personality really to the table. And like what I strive for the most is just the production on this. And like when that gets tiring, there really isn't anything on this album for me.
Yeah.
And like once we get to like the last 4 tracks, I'm just bored to tears personally. Like it doesn't personally do anything for me. Like I think production wise, they're still putting in effort, but they've cut themselves too thin at that point to where really nothing they're doing is resonating with me.
Yeah, and pretty much at that point, they're just getting lost in the old, tired, traditional soundscapes that inspired them, whether it's metalcore or there's a track, I always forget which one it was. I think it's either a Razor Scan or The Easy Way, I think, where they just kind of sound like a Nine Inch Nails ripoff.
But I think this band does peak on here with You and You Alone, which builds up to this spontaneous and unhinged moment with filling hurting guitars, punchy vocals, and this is truly where I think the band's aesthetic and momentum is unmatched in that realm. But the rest of the album is kind of like chasing the peak of that, and not really fulfilling anything past that.
This is an album that would have been a much better EP, because they had a lot of really good ideas, but they threw them all out at once at the very beginning and then just filled it in with mediocrity to get to album length. They should have just taken all those great ideas that they had, keep it in an EP form, and just accept that that's all the ideas they had at that moment.
Yeah. Keep in mind all scores futile and meaningless right now. I think this is like 5 to 6.
Yeah, this is a 6. If they God, such a frustrating listening experience. To like start so high and then just turn into such blandness. But yeah, it's a 6.
Yeah, so we go from Code Orange to mixing a bunch of other colors besides Code Orange. Time to go over
all the colors. Code Rainbow.
Code Rainbow. Time to go over the latest Brian Eno and Roger Eno album, Mixing Colors. Brian Eno is a English musician and record producer who's mostly known for pioneering ambient music, coining the term with his Ambient 1 music for airports such as fantastic, lovely, brilliantly spread out piece that essentially established ambient music as a genre, transferring later on going to have some other ambient hints like Apollo atmospheres and soundtracks with his brother Roger and Daniel Lanos behind him and accompaniment, and also more music for films, which is a personal favorite of mine. He's also known for his work with David Byrne and Talking Heads, especially in the album Remain in Light, and David Bowie with the Berlin trilogy.
Which is probably my favorite era of Bowie.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that era produced, like, any of the albums that would be, like, in my top, like, 3, but I think as a whole, that era is probably my favorite era of his.
Yeah. Roger Eno is a multi-instrumentalist, mainly regarded for his piano playing, and his teaming up with his older brother. This is actually the first ever duo album. They've worked together before on projects, but they've never really released a duo. It's more Brian Eno taking the forefront. Each track on this album has a color or a shade for a title, so you're supposed to get emotional resonance or soundscapes from the title track and relating that to a color. And I was just going into this expecting just fine ambient music. I wasn't expecting the whole entire world or landscape to be changed, because Brian Eno with his like latest leg of just like material has never really shocked me that much, but I enjoy the material nonetheless. Like, I don't think it's as groundbreaking as the material he's put out before or the material he started with, but I think he's still a revolutionary figure and still comes up with work that is very easily digestible and still, I don't know, fundamentally sane.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty fun. It's a nice, It's 18 songs, hour and 15 minutes, and it's a fun little ambient record. It doesn't have anything super captivating that goes past his previous material or matches up with it, but there's some lovely piano work and synth work on here. I think the two come together and produce just a very captivating album that has minimalist production, but still really strives to create a grand atmosphere. The colors actually match up for the most part to what the soundscapes entail, like Spring Frost has this like lukewarm bright tone, and it transfers to a more dark and noirish tone. Burnt Ember, Wintergreen is more majestic and cooler in atmosphere. You have Obsidian, which is more shiny and reflected with the dark organ on the track, manifesting itself to have a huge and amplified sound. Blonde is more cheerful and light with these higher pitched synth harmonies, which are excellent. Dark Sienna is more rich and thick and heavier with these like very heavy and loud keys that like consume up the entire mix. And then Rose Quartz is super cutesy and cheery and like a stepping into a new direction the album really hasn't gone for, and getting to like almost a cutesy factor. Desert Sand is very endless and empty, dry, and then Slow Movement is very vast and hot, warm. So there's very different tones and atmospheres that this gets to into the lovely work and the lovely ambiances put into this, and how everything just spreads easily across the hour and 15 minutes, and they make this hour and 15 minutes not seem like a slog. They have recurring ideas, but they feel very comforting and welcoming. The piano playing on this is fantastic. I think this is just a true to form, good ambient album that really isn't pushing any edges or anything like that, but it's true to form, just a fun listen.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. You kind of covered it pretty well. I'm not great at reviewing ambient music, admittedly, because I'm just not good at putting the ideas behind ambient music into words. So, you did good.
I did good. Keep in mind all scores if you tell me this right now. I'm feeling a 7+ on this.
Should I say like anything? Because I don't think I said anything that entire review.
Just give a score, or just say something stupid. I don't care. Like, at this point, it's over.
Okay, it's like a 7.5.
Okay, and I'll say something stupid so we can keep true to form.
Something stupid. Dumbest thing I know is Vincent. So.
Oh, okay, that hurt my feelings.
Good.
Just like a typical review. So we're on schedule.
Yeah.
keeping on schedule, time to go over the latest Districts album, You Know I'm Not Going Anywhere.
I already made a joke about the title, so I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah, I think this album art's actually Nirvana's is a Nevermind, but with adults.
I don't even remember what the album art first looked like.
It's the kid, right? It's Kid Underwater.
Yeah, the Nevermind one is. I don't remember what this album's album art is.
It's just a dude butt naked underwater.
Oh, then yeah, that's just Nevermind.
Just vibing, not a phone in sight. You love to see it. Districts is a Pennsylvania indie rock / alternative rock band featuring Rob Grote on vocals and guitar, Connor Jacobus on bass, Brandon Lawrence on drums, Pat Cassidy on guitar. I first heard of them back in my music director's days at WSU 1069, where I got sent this album, and sent their last album, Popular Manipulations, and I fell in love with their faded and warped production. I really liked Rob Grote's expressive voice and how he can amplify himself. I really love the track Ordinary Day. I also enjoyed the tracks Violent and Why Would I Want to Be. It was just a very steady, simple alternative rock album that was catchy, true to form, wasn't really pushing any boundaries, but at the end of the day, it was keeping and maintaining its own space. This new album, You Know I'm Not Going Anywhere, is 11 songs and 44 minutes, and it
doesn't go anywhere.
It really, for the most part, really doesn't. It was led by the single Cheap Regrets, which had this hazy synth, constant kick, shiny guitars, but the vocals were like a bit hazy that like it didn't really make Rob's voice stand out. While his performance was fine, you really just felt like he was kind of buried in the mix. So going to this album, I kept that in mind, and then going into the rest of this, it's the same thing. Like I feel like some of the mixing on this is very underwhelming. Like I still think the bright and shiny guitars come through on this, and sometimes they're very beautiful, but for the most part I think everything just blends together into a slog that's really unbearable. Like Rob is so buried into the back with this hazy effects put on his voice. He doesn't take up any of the mix. My Only Ghost, the opening track, doesn't progress and is just so this very cheap sounding, faded, distant indie rock tune. Changing is probably the best track in here because it's hazy in a good way, where the sound is dynamic. You have some nice guitar fuzz and dirty drums, and Rob has a clear presence in the mix on his vocals. But then you also get moments like Descend, which is just this very bland acoustic track, which again doesn't lead anywhere. I feel like the ideas that are best on here replicate their last album, so they're not super innovative or not progressive enough. And other moments on here are just bland acoustic performances, or performances that are so distant in the mix they don't take up any space.
Yeah. This whole album, though, my main issue is that a lot of it just feels kind of uninspired. It's pretty bare bones what you're expecting when you listen to just kind of indie alt-rock band. And I knew that's what I was going to get going into it, but I was hoping for something different, something to stand out from everything else within that genre. And there really isn't a whole lot here that does anything to really set the Districts apart from their contemporaries at all.
Yeah. I don't have too much else to say. I just find this to be pretty disappointing from an act that had some promise and could progress forward. Even though I didn't think this album was going to be amazing going into it, I at least wanted a couple tracks to really, really enjoy like I did on their last album. I really didn't get that here. While there's some decenter moments like Cheap Regrets and Changing, there really isn't anything else that is enjoyable to come back to.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, that's all I really got to say. Keeping in mind that I'll score a few telemeters right now, I'm feeling a 3 or 4 on this.
Yeah, I was gonna say 4.
Yeah, and where were you placed? Where's your placement currently? Are you still in the toilet paper and hand lotion bunker? No, not hand lotion. What is it? Fuck.
Hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer bunker. Are you still in your toilet paper and hand sanitizer bunker?
No, my bunker was overrun. So I had to move to a new bunker. Now this bunker is made out of paper towels and milk. Oh. But I wasn't able to make my bunker in the cool, so all my milk has gone bad. So now I've been slowly turning all of my rotten, putrid, horrible milk into smoke bombs and gas bombs to attack the other forts that are currently being built.
A gas
I
bomb is
will,
a perfect way to describe this album.
I
Time to
will,
go over
I
the
will
latest.
reclaim my toilet paper fort.
I was trying to do a smooth transition from you, but you just kind of continued on the rant. But I
Yep.
kind of enjoyed how you just didn't give a fuck either way, regardless.
Never do.
Time to go over the latest Watsky album, Placement. Watsky is a Bay Area slam poet turned rapper who's been around for at least the last decade with a mix of alternative hip hop, emo, and spoken word. He is unbelievably cheesy and goofy, but sometimes there's just a nice charm to that. You find some like, I don't know. You just enjoy it sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's unbearably cheesy. Like I think on Material on those first two albums, his self-titled Watsky and Cardboard Castles, he gets into material that's just undoubtedly annoying and cheesy.
Yeah.
But I think later on like All You Can Do and Xfinity is Times Infinity. That's what it's called. Xfinity is like a internet service.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's the one run by Verizon.
Oh, well, that explains why no one knows about it.
But I think he got into more mature terrain, especially on Times Infinity, where he was getting into more political, but also different soundscapes, and he was challenging himself way more over the production he was over and becoming a more compelling artist by having various types of production and experiences, and all kind of flow together in this one very captivating way. I really enjoyed Times Infinity, and then following up with Complaint, I thought was just like, yes, it was stupid. It's one of my favorite reviews because Trevor just has a field day with the review, just completely shitting on it, but he does have points. The album is overtly cheesy and at times overtly edgy. I found some charm in it, but there's also some really, really good pop performances. Like Mean Ass Drunk is on there. That's a fantastic pop tune.
That's a fucking, like, bop right there.
Yeah, but like he Trevor's not wrong in the fact that there's just some moments sound like a 15-year-old girl wrote it. But even then, like, at least Watsy's being consistent with what she's always been, so I can give him that, I guess.
Yeah.
This new album is the second part of the trilogy that started with Compliant, and it's part of this like 3-album set. It has the same exact font as a Complaint, and
apparently the third one's supposed to be called Intention because if you put like them together, like they start to spell out each of the words still, and the only word that still fits is intention.
Okay, that's interesting. But this new album, Placement's 9 songs, 38 minutes, and it's very disappointing. I just didn't. This was there's like no highs for me on this. There's nothing that I don't think Watsky's challenging himself. I don't think there's anything remotely catchy on here. I don't think there's anything new or captivating. It like comparing this to his last album had really good pop moments and things that Watsky really hasn't done yet. And it's interesting to see him challenge himself in a new way and provide some compelling performances. This doesn't really have that. His vocals across this entire thing, when he attempts to sing, just come off very, very flat and don't really work in the grander scheme of things. The production he's over is not inherently bad, but it's too similar to things he's been over before, and it's not really compelling enough to hold its own with a very flat Watsky who's repetitive on top of the production. I don't know. Like, I think the moments like the advanced placements, the opening with the fast pitch harmony is so annoying and just like sets this album off into a place where I didn't want it to start off at. And then it gets in some like mediocre rapping and like he holds his own, but he really isn't like saying much that like he hasn't said already.
Yeah.
Track Undermined is like a very bad Chainsmokers like pop track, like electro pop trap with annoying huge quick atmospheric synths that don't fit the performance, and Watsky's just kind of underminingly doing harmonies on top of it with the feature vocalist. Dreams of Brox's has the most interesting performance on it with this weird spoken word part that talks about this dream he has where he spoke to this goblin named Frank, and it gets into all this like different absurdist territory. But like the parts before and after are so painstakingly boring pop that like it has no character to it. It can, like, when you get that moment of character, it's nice, but it's consumed by two ends that are just nothing compared to like that bit of character, like humanity he shows in the spoken word verse.
Yeah. The track's just weird because it also is just kind of a little all over the place. And at times, like, the switches are kind of interesting, but half the time, though, it just feels like it's a little lost in itself.
Yeah. The Price of Growing Up is probably his best vocal performance on here, but like the message of the track is like all the things you lose after you grow up, and the ideas of like fear and modern day issues, like the paranoia of it almost comes into play, but he doesn't really explain himself, so the message just comes off as like very flat.
Yeah.
Like there's no good explanation. Like the message itself could be good, but like his use of it is just very uninteresting and uninviting and doesn't really bring anything unique to the premise. And Black Hole Eyes is probably the most annoying track on here, with this distorted pop rap that like really doesn't fit. It has this very annoying frontward keys. Like Watsky's is like most abstract and strange, but it really doesn't work as the premise of the track. And that's pretty much my take on this album.
Yeah, this album, so I listen to Watsky a lot. It's my fiance's favorite artist. And no, Watsky has like a place. I see why people do like him as much as they do. He is kind of goofy and a little cheesy, but there's like a charm to it a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And while he might not have been like, he's definitely not my favorite artist, he is growing on me the more I listen to tracks from Times Infinity and Complaint even. But this one is just, it doesn't feel interesting. Like, even if I'm not like super into his music from the last couple of things, at least it's always like interesting. He always has a character, and there's a little bit of a charm to his cheesiness. And even when he's not doing the best performance he could do, there's still just a charm to it. And this album doesn't have a lot of that charm anymore.
Yeah, I just don't see the appeal. Like I don't see the same character I did when I really got into his music when I was like a junior in high school. Yeah. Like there isn't the same appeal. It doesn't hit the same edge. And not to say he needs to replicate himself, but there isn't anything new on here either. It's just very tired.
Yeah, it's both not new, but it's also not the same.
Yeah.
It's doing the things that he's always done before, but the charm that he used to have just doesn't feel like it's there anymore.
Yeah. That's all I really gotta say. Keep in mind that all scores are futile and meaningless right now. I think this is like a 2 to 3.
I was gonna give this like a 5.
That's your opinion.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want. I don't care. But if you're wrong, you're wrong, and that's a wrong opinion, Jonathan.
It's a 5 with a little asterisk next to it.
I actually don't give a fuck. I just like telling you're wrong.
That's fair. You're wrong too.
I'm not. I'm 100% correct. Always correct. Never wrong. That's it for this week's episode of the Anthony and Todd Show. I almost said keep in mind all scores are futile and meaningless. I think I lost my mind. I've lost all my marbles. All my marbles are gone, Jonathan. You need to help me relocate some of these marbles.
I can't do that. Social distancing.
Social distancing. At least hit him with a stick, like a 6-foot stick. Nope. Poke him back to me.
No. Social distancing.
Till next time, guys, you can find us at Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Anthony and Todd. You can find us at youtube.com/The Anthony and Todd Show, and Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Podcasts, and Spotify by searching The Anthony and Todd Show in your favorite podcast browser. Till next time, guys, I've been Vincent.
No, I'm Jonathan.
And see you, boyos.
I'm doing the peace sign.
You can't see it.